Well, 8 seconds. I know some of you guys were probably thinking, like, are you guys talking about riding a bull? No, we're not talking about riding a bull. I'm talking about the attention span of people today. 8 seconds. And children are even less than that. And that, unfortunately, is less than the attention span of a goldfish. Yeah. So over the last 20 years, we keep going down in our attention span. At 2000, it was 12 seconds, and that doesn't seem very long. In 2022, 8 seconds. And I would say for kids, that's 6 or less, right? So if you don't catch their attention in 8 seconds or less, they've swiped, they've moved on, they said, I am not listening to you. You've got to have them dialed in at 8 seconds. And we all know that our content, the Bible, the gospel, is something they need, something that can change their life. But how do we catch their attention? How do we get to them in that 8 seconds when they have so much going on in their world? And I would like to present you with something that I just made up, but I like to call it the Uproar Algorithm of making lifelong disciples. So an algorithm is like a process of doing something, and an uproar is an impassioned noise. Not just a noise, but an impassioned noise. So we're going to have to do both of those things. We got to have a process, and then we have to be impassioned about that process. Because what are we going up against? Now, whether you like to believe it or not, we live in a post-Christian era. Most of our kids, whether they are church kids or not, they are facing secularism from every direction. For example, let's look at youth sports, right? So youth sports, they already have tournaments on Sundays. Now they're having practices on Wednesday night. So my sons, I'm a huge sports family, okay? So all my kids play sports. My sons play football. And this year, Broken Arrow youth football said, they've had a rule, no Wednesday night practices. But so many people complained because everybody else was having Wednesday night practices that Broken Arrow youth football got rid of that rule. When I was in high school, we had to be done with practice by 7 p.m. on a Wednesday night because that's when church started. It didn't matter if I only had 30 minutes in the gym for our team because we had to share a gym. Didn't matter. Practice had to be done at 7 p.m. That's not what it's like anymore, right? But that's not the only place they're getting secularism. They're getting it from everything. We live in a world where it's me, I, my body, my choice, self-care. We gotta think about ourselves first and then worry about others later. And we all know that that's not what we're called to do. That's not what God wants us to do. They're thinking isolation is good. I can be by myself and I can live by myself and I don't need to bother with anybody else because COVID had proved that people are scared. Like some of my kids in my church they don't want to go on vacation because they were scared to leave their homes because we told them leaving their home was safe. Safe was home, that was the only safe place was to stay home, be safe. And then we go back to what we started with, is our attention span for electronics. They've got TikTok, YouTube, Instagram, Snapchat, video games. And those things are just feeding at them secularism. Even if you sit down on a Friday night like TGIF, you guys remember TGIF? It was sort of wholesome at least when I was a kid. Now you can't watch it without there being something that we as a Christian people are like, our kids are seeing this all the time. So what should we do? Should we get rid of technology? Say, no, you can't have a cell phone. Don't leave the house. We're only going to go to church schools. I'm going to homeschool you. And I'm not saying that's not right for your children, but if you're choosing to do that just to keep them away from the world, that's going to keep us on the same path that we're on currently, which is a dying Western church. Which brings us to the religiously unaffiliated, called the Nuns, are growing significantly in the past decade. So they've taken over Catholics, mainline Protestants, and all of the followers of non-Christian faith. So those who say that they are not religious in any way, they don't believe in a God, any God, is growing. And our church, whether we want to say it is dying. By statistics. I'm not just, and you can be mad at me about some of these things, but statistically, our church is not going anywhere. It's going down. So, back to the Uproar Algorithm. What process is going to keep kids in church? This may or may not work. I don't know. But these are the things that I found that have helped me reach people in a secular world. First, we got to think outside of the box. We got to be more creative. We can't say, oh, well, when I was a kid, this is what we did. And it worked when you were a kid. That's great. People just stop by churches because they wanted to go to church. People don't want to go to a church anymore. They don't want to go to your church building. Then, some of you really might hate me on this one, because in the conversations we had before, they got to get their Bibles out, embrace their devices. Because why is the Bible on your phone any less of a Bible than it is in paper form? And then lastly, and we talked about this one too, was intergenerational relationships. And how can we do those? Because they don't just form themselves, right? We have to be intentional about that. So let's first start with, are our current programs reaching anyone outside of your church? Are they reaching people who don't believe in Jesus? The traditional model, as we talked about, a lot of us were saying Sunday school, then we go to children's church, a lot of us have Wednesday night, and then we do VBS. So let's look at Sunday school, for example, and okay, I said we do quizzing during this time. We do. That's when our quizzing time is, but we do not have Sunday school. I got rid of Sunday school, not because I think Sunday school is terrible. It's a good thing. It can reach your church kids, but is it reaching anyone outside of your church? Is it bringing families in? Is anyone who doesn't attend Sunday regularly coming to Sunday school? Anybody? No, it's not. So why are we still doing it? I don't know. Because it's what we've always done. So now, I'm not saying this will work for you, but what I've done is I've taken that hour and I am taking Sunday school. I'm not calling it school because, again, back to the attention span, school is different. But I'm taking it to a school. So every Wednesday morning, I have what's called Kids for Christ at a school. Now, you have to have a teacher sponsor for that sort of thing. But I can guarantee you that in any of your schools, you have a Christian there. And an easy in for you is like a teacher at your church. But I suggest getting, like you were saying, getting involved with a school that's close to you, right? Close to your community, close to your school. So hopefully, you have a teacher that might go to here and they teach a close by school. And be like, hey, can you sponsor this program? It could be before, or it could be after school. And I can guarantee that usually at our school, we have to have a permission slip from parents for them to attend. But parents are like, oh, I can drop my kids off an hour early? Okay, I don't care what they're learning, but I get rid of them for an extra hour. And a lot of times, people have to pay for before and after care because they have to go to work. And drop off for our kids is late. So they have to be at work usually before drop off. So if this works out very well for them, they can drop their kids off by 8 o'clock and then head to work. So that's just one example of something that you can do to change your Sunday school hour. And I'm not saying that it's not important for your kids, your church kids, to also get this knowledge, but I'm saying if we are trying to grow our church, we're trying to be on mission of creating more disciples, let's go and look outside of our church doors. So if we're going to move on to VBS. I have said this before, and I hate it. I do. I hate VBS because, not because I don't think that the program's good, not that I don't think that it's fun, because the kids have lots of fun. I hate it because, you know who attends my VBS? Life Church kids. All the churches who don't have anything for them during that time. Those people who hop from church to church to church doing all the VBSs, right? So I was like, okay, if we're going to do something summer program, and like I said before, I'm a huge sports fan, a huge sports proponent, let's make it a sports camp, and not the ones that are like VBS sports programs, the mega sports camps. I've asked secular organizations within my area to come to our church and put on whatever expertise they did. So Broken Arrow Youth Football came, put on football camp. Broken Arrow Youth Soccer came, put on soccer camp. Because guess what? Instead of just getting all the church hoppers, these secular organizations were now advertising for me to bring other kids who would see like a traditional VBS and like, I'm not going to go learn about the Bible. Like, that's lame. But I will go to a soccer camp. And so if a soccer club is saying, hey, I got this soccer camp, it's free, they're going to go. And I didn't just have sports. We had an art teacher came in, and she taught they painted Starry Night this year, and it was super cool. We had a cake decorator, and she came in and taught the kids how to decorate cookies. We had some cooking class. So it didn't just reach sports kids, even though I feel like, for me right now, that's my passion, because I literally sat next to 3 moms, and this was weird for me, because I was like, at practice the other night, they were all drinking beer, like literally at their kids' practice, and I was like, this is super weird, are they're drinking beer, and like, I came home and told my husband that, and I was like, I don't really know if they were, and he was like, well, they're not going to tell you because you're a pastor, and I'm like, well, I wasn't judging them, I just was like, that's different, right? That's not my normal. So I thought that was different. And I don't know that I'm going to ever reach those people. However, I still have those relationships with those people, and I hope to eventually reach those people. Because once I build those relationships at sports practice while they're drinking their beer, I can invite them to church. Or invite their kids to church on Wednesday night, because I'm better at dealing with kids than adults. That's why I'm a children's pastor, not adults. So that's just one idea on how to change VBS. I really love the VBSs that go places. So you go and do it at a park. We took Wednesday nights to parks, and we didn't have any people come back from that, but we spoke to people, and people in the park that night heard the gospel whether they really wanted to or not, because they were there. Our sports camp, however, we have seen more visitors from non-church people than I have in the 5 years before doing VBS. We had lots of people come back, and my favorite story was this little football player, because we do have a lot of sports kids that are church kids. So they coach a team, and they invited their whole team to attend this football camp. And this one little guy, he'd never been to church. This is his first time hearing about Jesus, and while he didn't come and do the prayer, he asked after that, the next week, he was like, well, that was interesting. He's asking his parents now about these God questions, and they're like, well, they don't go to church, so we don't know anything. So they sent him to the coach, who is now answering these God questions for this kid who'd never heard about God before. And in Oklahoma, that's rare to find, because we live in the Bible Belt, so we do live kind of in a bubble still, where we still feel like the church is a big place because there's one on every corner, but there's still kids out there that don't know what God is, because their parents are those who are hurt by the church, and so they grew up going to church, but they don't go to church, right? They say they pray, but they aren't really practicing faith at home. Okay, moving on. So here's just a few more of my outside of the box ideas. Now these are things that I have done or think are great ideas. So we talked about starting a school club, changing VBS into a sports camp and not like making it something that is not just, hey, come learn about Jesus, because no one is coming to that. Take Wednesday nights to a park. Do devotionals before sporting events. This is something that a lot of parks are doing because they realize, oh, we have tournaments on Sundays, and so these people miss church. So people are actually having these devotionals at the different sporting venues. So I recommend going and talking to, if you have one close in your area, talking to the people who run that and be like, hey, I would love to do this for you. They don't have to do anything but tell the teams, show up, field 5, 8 a.m. devotional. Another thing I think is great is being a part, like we were just a part of a back to school block party. Instead of like saying, hey, come have fun at our church, because people aren't coming to our church, but guess where they're going? They're going to that school. So why don't you just team up with them, partner with them and be like, hey, we will be there. We've put up our huge, they don't care, because you're coming, you're giving them things, usually, right? And you can put as much advertisement up as you want. People have this misnomer that schools don't want you there, like separation of church and state, but they want you there as long as you're being a benefit to them, obviously. But we want to help them, right? We want to help those families in need, and they're not coming to us for those things. So go to them instead of them coming to you, because that is not going to happen. Moving on to technology and how it can be a tool and not a torment. And this comes out of my own personal struggles, because we had some girls that would come with their phones, right? And they weren't on them during children's church, but they would sit on them watching YouTube in the gym. And I was like, well, what if Johnny's mom sees them and Johnny's not allowed to watch these certain videos? Like, how can I regulate this? So I'm just going to ban them from church. You just can't bring them. At first I was like, hey, no, everybody put them in a basket. And then I was like, oh, I'm liable for your $1,000 phone, so no thank you. Okay, you guys just don't bring them. That's not okay. They don't belong here. But what if they do belong there? What if you use them in different ways, like we just talked about, the Bible? And I'm not saying I personally prefer paper Bibles, okay? I can write in them, but that is not the way of the future. Our kids aren't going to live like we lived. Like our kids, starting in middle school, they are not writing out essays. They are doing everything on a device. So we don't need to say, oh, that's bad. No, we just need to embrace the fact that it's different. It's different than we did it. So, hey, pull out your Bible, on your phone. Find the verse. And let me tell you, it's a lot easier to find it on your phone, isn't it? To find it in the actual book. I think that stuff is important too. I teach my kids how to find it in paper version too. But help them find it on their phone and make sure that they have it. My other thing that I want to start, I haven't started yet, so I don't know how it's going to go over. So many of my kids do have cell phones. I want to be on that cell phone. I want to be able to text them and communicate with them personally. Now, could that cross the line? Yes. Does that get scary? Yes. So what I've developed is a permission slip, but also I would be doing it on a church device only through my computer, not texting them from my personal cell phone. So there would be a record of any and all texts that I would send. And, you could send, hey, I love you, or that might be a little weird. Hey, I thought you did really great on Sunday. Or, hey, how's life going? You might not get a response because they are terrible texters. I text my son all the time and he responds, okay, or hi. Like, I don't get a long, lengthy thing back. But I just feel like if that device is the most, the biggest influence in their life right now, I want to be on that. I had 2 little girls, this in the last 2 years, 2 girls, they were 13, that I personally knew that committed suicide. 2. One of them was one of the first kids that I baptized. And she was a non-church kid. She came only on Wednesday nights, and when she went to the youth group, she kind of just followed because her parents didn't force them to come. But she was getting bullied, not only at school, but on her phone. And while I'm not saying that, I would have made a huge difference, but it's hard for me to believe that if she was hearing good voices on that phone, stuff from people who loved her, people that really cared about her, other than just like, you're a terrible person, would it have made a difference? That would have literally saved her life. I don't know. It could have. Those are the things that have brought this to my forefront. And I know we all say that TikTok is bad and YouTube is bad, but what if you're giving them YouTube videos to go look up? Because we all know that YouTube and TikTok, they work on algorithms, right? So I have TikTok on my phone. If you go to my TikTok, you are not seeing naked ladies dancing. You're not seeing anything that I don't want to see, because they're sending me stuff that I want to see, because after 8 seconds, I didn't swipe. So I'm seeing preachers and teachers and cleaning people, and I think there's a little fitness sparkled in there. So it's all about an algorithm. So the more stuff that they search up that is Christ, or that is Jesus, or that is God on their YouTube or on their TikTok accounts, guess what shows up in their feed? More Jesus, more Christ. And so that's why mine is just those things, because that's what I've watched the most of. My son, he happened upon, let me find the lady's name. He happened upon this lady, let's see, where is she at? Liv Pearsall. And she's like, man, Mom, look at these videos. She's really funny. And I watched it, and it was a lady who was doing Bible stories, only using modern language and modern places and party, that kind of thing. Now, I probably wouldn't show them to my kids on Sunday morning, because they do use some language that, people probably wouldn't. They're not curse words, but it's just language that you probably wouldn't want to play inside church to everybody, and it kind of gives them. But nonetheless, he found these, and so he started watching more and more of them, and so more and more of those kind of videos were popping up into his feed. So it's the stuff that if we can feed them these things, hey, go look this up, hey, do this, then more of that stuff is going to feed into them instead of the secular stuff that we're trying to not shelter them from, but we want to be the loudest voice, right? So that is how we can do that, is by, instead of them finding or getting fed the secular stuff, they're getting fed the Bible stuff. So we talked about this. All right. Here is some more technology ideas. The other thing, you can put a Spotify worship playlist together and send them that. They can listen to worship songs while they're at home. Have them use their cell phones to create a video. I'm sure you guys have seen this before. That's not anything new, but that's another way that they can use their phones while they're at church. Obviously, you can share the Bible app, but I haven't looked into how many plans there are that are kid-based. But there's a version where you can you can do this Bible study together, right? I do a Bible study with my hometown people. You can go on there, and then there's a chat feed. So you could share them a Bible plan and be like, hey, I'll do this with you over an amount of time. So those are all things that we can do to embrace technology, embrace devices. So this brings me to my biggest and loudest point, and it's our intergenerational connections, a key to sustaining the future church. And to be honest, it really shouldn't be a question, because this is the most important part of the future church, and I'll tell you why. So about 2 in 5 kids have a median relationship with an adult at church that's outside of the pastor relationship. This is other people inside the church who are adults who children interact with. And these are some things that it helps with. So they are more likely to integrate biblical principles. They're more likely to study the Bible on their own. They're more likely to understand the gospel. They're more likely to memorize Bible verses. They're more likely to have friends at church. They're more likely to say that church matters to them. They're more likely to look forward to church. And then children's church is the highlight of their week. So these are reasons why and how we can create lifelong disciples is by getting intergenerational relationships to be the main focus of our children's program. Because right now, at our church, our buildings are separate. You go to big church, you go to your own building, don't blend. And it's not that older people hate children, well, some do. Some are like, oh, they're a little much, and they are a little much, right? But it's important in these matters where, 73% versus 37% that said that church mattered to them if they knew an adult cared about them inside their church, other than their pastor. Because, some of us are paid to, have that relationship, to form that bond with them. People that are inside your church, why do they? Because that's what God calls them to do. So, we've talked in several of the groups about having a family Sunday. And that's where generations, worship together. And like you were saying earlier about the church who, they have people going alongside their people. And that, I think that is super important, like the mentoring system. And you don't have to call it mentoring system, but our children need to understand that they are the church. And I tell them this all the time. You guys are the church. You guys, once you believe in Jesus and you say, yes, Lord, I want to follow you, you are just like me. I am not any smarter than you. I'm not any better than you. You are just like me. You can serve the church with your simple gifts just like I can. And so if we teach them and get them with someone who cares about them and they build a separate relationship with them, and you can do that through mentoring, but also you can do that in just family church where people are seeing children that they don't that don't normally see them. Because on our normal Sundays, they aren't seeing them unless they go to the other building. And guess what? They're not going over there because that's weird. They wouldn't just, hey, just wanted to say hi. No, that's not something they're going to do. You've got to make things intentional for them. So the mentoring thing does that super easily. All you have to do is set that up. So when we do Family Sunday, I do have kids that do the worship team, they do communion, they do greeters, they do all those things. Now, we don't do it every Sunday. We only do it once every fifth Sunday because kids don't really enjoy being in big church. And I feel like if we force them to sit in there and the pastor has really got to at least relate something to them, or they just check out, right? So they're just sitting in there for no reason. So a lot of the time on Family Sunday, I do the preaching because at least I know sort of how to connect with children. Another big thing we do is the kids take over. So the kids are doing everything, and so there's not an adult to help them. So we did it during Christmas time, and they did the prayer. They did the scripture readings. I had interactive things during my sermon where they were sitting in their seats and they were reciting scriptures that they memorized. And you know what else that does? That shows your older people that, hey, they're not just going over there and being babysat, because I know we've come to a place where some people think that's what it is, and that's not what we do. That's not what we should be doing. But kids are learning over there, and they're just as important. Their relationship with God is theirs. And a lot of the time, I think parents come to us and drop their kid off, but they also think that somehow their children's faith is their faith, right? Well, I have this faith, so my child has this faith. And that's not the case. And that's why I've had conversations over the past year well, my kid can't get baptized yet. They don't have. And I'm like, I understand your point, and that's definitely your preference to choose that. But you've got to remember that this is your child's relationship with the Lord and not yours. So whether you think they're ready or not, how are you going to judge their relationship with the Lord? I don't know. That is a side note that I just wandered to. Another thing, so talking about the mentor program, what we're doing now is teaming up a prime timer, and they're going to pick out like a kid. So this Sunday, we are doing like an all about me sheet, and they're going to take their picture and put it on this all about me sheet, and it tells like favorite things, birthdays, what they do, favorite Bible character, and then the prime timers are going to look at these, and they're going to choose somebody, and then they're going to send them several notes throughout the year where, you know, hey, I care about you. Hey, how's your soccer going? And it's not just going to be notes, but they're going to seek these people out during church. They are going to be intentional and have conversations with these kids. And then in return, in the spring, we're going to do like a prime time or like intermingle type thing where the kids are going to buy a little gift for their mentor and tell them how much it's meant to them over the year. Another way that we do intergenerational serving each other is we put on a veterans program. Now that's not always, I mean, it is still intergenerational, but it's not always the olds. We have some younger veterans. But they love that. So we serve them food, like the kids do it all. They serve them, they clean up after them, they put on a little program, it's like 5 minutes long. They say a Bible verse and sing some songs to the veterans. But then the veterans and them, they just have conversations and sit at tables together and eat together. And it's just a really cool thing and the veterans love it just as much as the kids do. So that's another thing that we do to be intentional about these intergenerational relationships. I think it's important that, like she said, kids serve alongside each other. So find projects where kids can do them together, like you guys were talking about. Either we put together crisis care kits. I think we had 50 of them. But that's something super easy kids can do, but it's also something super easy that adults can do, and they can do it together. Not just the kids are doing it and the adults are doing it. Do it together. So the hard part for us, as we all know, we don't always get to see the fruits of our labor, right? We don't always get to see what they're doing. Later on, we won't get to see whether any of these things matter. But here's just a few more ideas. Family Sunday, kids take over, create a program with your prime timers, serve together, and then again, let your kids be volunteers. Sorry, I skipped that part. I don't know if you do it in your children's church or not, but they can volunteer, be part of your program too. So they can lead worship in your children's church. They can be prayers in your children's church. They can be greeters. So what I've developed is what I call the alpha team, and instead of forcing kids to do something they don't want to do, the kids get to choose where they serve each Sunday. So they come in and they put their name in. I think I have worship, prayer, and hospitality, which would be greeting and that sort of thing. And they can put their name where they feel like that fits me, that fits my gifts best. And yeah. So again, we don't get to see the fruits of our labor much, but I really think that this whole, the biggest part about such a hard word. Intergenerational relationships and being intentional about them is the hugest and the biggest and the key part to keeping our children at the church. Because what it does is it creates a community culture. It creates a place where they belong. It's not a place where they go to get fed. They go and they are giving part of themselves. It's not transactional anymore. Right? So they're going and they're being a part. And obviously, we all know that Jesus is our model of how to do things, and he shows us how to create a community. In Romans 12, here verse 4 says, "For just as each of us has one body with many members, and these members do not all have the same function, so in Christ we, though many, form one body. And each member belongs to all the others," not just adults. It doesn't say adults anywhere in this. We have gifts. that includes children, according to the grace given to each of us. If your gift is prophesying, then prophesy in accordance with your faith. If it is serving, then serve. If it is teaching, then teach. If it is to encourage, then give encouragement. If it's giving, then give generously. If it is to lead, do it diligently. If it is to show mercy, do so cheerfully. So let's use our gifts with children, but also remember that God gave them gifts as well, and help them feel and be a part of the church. I just wanted to leave you with one last thing that I thought was really kind of hit the whole thing on the heart. Should church leaders keep themselves open to something new? There are new opportunities in store for the health and the future of the church. So don't think that anything you did in the past was bad, but just stay open to new things, to being creative, being outside of the box. And I feel like something big's gotta happen. It's really disheartening to go to places and be a part of a world that's so secular, and I read a comment the other day. It was like, these people in Oklahoma, all they do is put religion in places where it doesn't belong. But what they don't understand is God is everywhere and belongs everywhere, right? But they don't get that because they are secular and they don't understand how much they need God, and they need him to fill their lives. And that if we keep these things open for our kids, and we are like, I see that your parents let you watch YouTube, or you're watching all these crazy videos on there. Why don't you try to check this out? Don't shame them. Check this out. I'm open to what you are knowing right now, because we don't know everything, and they are living in a world that is so different than what we grew up in. So different. It's hard to fathom the fact that my, middle schooler, while he doesn't have social media or anything, he just went to middle school. I had to have a conversation about, hey, what happens if you run into somebody in the bathroom doing drugs, having sex? Because at my kid's middle school, the police are there once a day. A kid gets arrested at least once a week from his middle school. We live in Broken Arrow, so people don't think that it's not happening at your schools, because it is. And he's like, well, I don't know. I'm like, walk away. Just walk away first, and if you see an adult, go tell them, hey, you might want to go check out the bathroom. You don't have to narc on anybody, because that's a big deal. You'll get beat up, right? But you can go tell them, hey, something's not going on right in there. And I have parents that have messaged me, hey, do you have any community service at your church? Because, my daughter, she's a really good girl. She's in the band, but she got caught vaping in the bathroom. Because they're getting all these things forced on them all the time. And how do we keep them from being pressured into that? And that's filling them from our churches and loving on them and doing everything we can to give them a foundation of which they have a standard where they're like, thanks, but no thanks. You can go ahead and do that. But I serve someone greater. I love someone greater. They take care of me, and they don't want me to do that. So that is my passion, is just thinking outside the box, trying to do things that, I didn't grow up. I was baptized in 5th grade, but I walked to church by myself. So I walked to church in my tiny town. My mom took us to church for a little while, but I would say I would fit more into the category of an unchurched, non-church kid. I grew up in a small town in which church is different there too, because then you have different small town politics at play. I was told I couldn't hang out with the Methodists because they weren't good enough, and I went to a Christian church. It was just First Christian. I don't know. And so that was my viewpoint on church, and I was I'm not. I gave up all organized religion for a long frame of my time until I met my husband, who brought me back into the church. And so I have a passion for these kids who are not inside the church. I think that the church kids are wonderful, and my kids are clearly going to be church kids, but I just have this passion to reach people that are not with us every Sunday. We're not with us every Wednesday. And I don't want to make them feel bad that they're not. I want them to know that I love them, that I see them, and that maybe eventually they can be me. And they can come and be a part of something so wonderful and life-changing and be a new person. So what I really want to do eventually is I would prefer to collaborate more. I mean, we work as a district where I feel like we're each one church and we don't ever get together except for these big district events, but we can work together. We have budgets that can make something way better if we work together rather than, oh, I got $50 or $100 for this. You know, like if you guys want to put on a huge event and you need people, you need supplies, you need something, I would love for you to reach out to me. I have cards that I'll pass out that have this information on it. My contact information will be there. And then I also linked all of these slides and then all the permission slips and all that stuff that I've created. I put it in children's ministry tools, so I'll give you cards that you can access that. If you want me to change, like you're like, oh, I love this permission slip. I tried to figure out how to make it a Word document, but right now it's just a PDF. So I can change that for you and just send it back to you. So you'll have my contact information.